So the first thing that I wanted to ask you, Gail, is why did you write this book? I know you're going to maybe have a shared excerpt with this, but if you can give us a bit of a sense of why this book?
So for me, this book has been in the works for a number of years. It's been germinating, sort of percolating, and it just felt like there's a need for this message out there in the world. The upshot of which is that life is not meant to be hard. And I know for many people, this is a novel concept, and perhaps even a concept that we want to resist. We seem very, very attached to this idea that life is supposed to be hard. And as I've been working with my coaching clients, as I've been looking at my own life, as I've been moving through my own journey, I had a bit of an epiphany where it occurred to me that when we're feeling burdened by life, it's because we're doing something wrong, and that there actually is a way for us to be living with a greater sense of ease. So that was the essence of this book for me.
This would be a good time, because I know you have something you wanted to read to us, and so do you want to read that part? Because I think, again, it helps set context for the book.
So let me just read from the introduction, because it sort of encapsulates it pretty well. From my perspective, I could be biased. So, I have a very fundamental belief about life. It's one that I started articulating several years ago, and in a nutshell, this is it. The notion that life is hard is a myth. Although our language is rife with phrases like no pain, no gain, anything worth having is worth working hard for, and hard work pays off, the core message contained in these sayings seems to have gone askew. Consciously or not, we've taken these bromides and interpreted them to mean that life must be hard in order to be worthwhile. Otherwise, you're just being lazy. This way of thinking has gotten us into a boatload of trouble. Life isn't meant to be hard, nor is it meant to be burdensome. Instead, life is meant to be lived with a sense of ease, and if your life feels less than ease-filled, then you're doing something wrong. I realize that this may sound like a harsh statement, but my hope is that by the end of this book, you'll understand what I'm getting at. Before you rise up in mutiny, let me be really clear. I'm not saying that life is easy. There's a difference between easy and ease-filled. Life, by its very nature, is challenging. And I know I experience life challenges to various degrees every single day. I support my clients in dealing with their own unique challenges. I've helped my family and my friends navigate their challenges. Challenge is very, very real. That being said, in the same way that there's a difference between the concepts of easy and ease, there's a difference between the concepts of challenge and burden. The differences may be subtle. However, having an understanding of these subtleties is essential. Too many people don't endeavor to understand the distinction, and as a result, they accept burden when they don't need to. And they forego ease, believing that it's not possible in a challenge-filled life. I share this idea with you because I want you to be prepared for some discomfort. As you familiarize yourself with the ideas in these coming pages, you're going to start to open up to the possibility of living life differently. From this place, you will be better able to release the burdens that are currently on your shoulders, and while this idea may appeal at first, like anything new, this will simultaneously feel uncomfortable. That being said, I know that embracing challenge without accepting burden is a really liberating way to live, and it is this liberation that awaits you if you decide to keep reading. If this sense of liberation is something that appeals to you in any way, shape, or form, then my request is that you set aside whatever skepticism you hold about the possibility of finding a path of ease, and allow yourself to absorb the content that follows. If, by the end of the book, you find yourself still wanting to stay the hard course that you've been navigating so far, You're absolutely free to do so. On the other hand, if any part of this book calls you to a simpler way to be, invites you to find a path of ease, then I would challenge you to take up the invitation. From my personal experience, what I know for sure is that when you let go of burden and embrace ease, no matter what you're facing, life just feels better all around.
That's great. So that starts to tip us a little bit to the intention behind the book. And if you think about who this book is for, how would you answer that?
So the short answer is the book's for everybody. Because when I wrote it very deliberately with the intent that anybody who wanted to pick it up could glean some essential message from it. That being said, it is particularly directed at those who are feeling challenged by whatever's going on for them, those who are feeling that sense of burden, and those who are looking for a new way to be with whatever it is that life has handed to them.
So following that, on that, if you think about what your best hope is for how people might work with and live with this book, because you've issued an invitation in it, so what's your best hope that might happen?
My hope is that all of us, and I include myself in this because I'm as human as anyone, so I slip off the wagon from time to time, probably more often than I would like, but my biggest hope is that we'll start to bust this myth that life is hard and start to really approach our daily living from this space of possibility and what might be possible if it actually isn't meant to be a burden, no matter what we're facing. And I know we're all facing our stuff. So that's my biggest hope, is that we start to experience this paradigm shift.
One of the other areas that you, in the theme of myth busting, one of the things, and I love this, I was reading the book and there's a statement that Gail makes, which is life balance is a myth. And I was really interested about that one and wonder, why do you believe that? And what are you hoping to do by provoking people to explore that myth?
It's funny, I just gave a talk on this topic on Tuesday night. So for me, life balance is a myth. And the irony about that is that when I first started coaching, I branded myself as a life balance coach. That was what I did. I worked with women mostly to help them find a sense of balance in their lives. And it went pretty well, but as I started to grow my practice and do more and more coaching, what I realized is that something was off. I was experiencing a great deal of success in the work that I was doing. Women were making changes and shifts in their lives for the better, and yet this concept that we tend to call life balance or work-life balance just felt misaligned. And I realized that it's because the concept doesn't apply. Life is not something you balance. We're not living bank ledgers. And the concept of work-life balance is even one step further from anything that might be achievable. And so in the book, I go into a little bit more about what that might look like and what we need to replace that whole concept with if we're actually going to live lives that are meaningful.
Okay, great. Well, one of the things you start pointing to, and you really make a big point about values, the role of values in people's lives. I happen to be the kind of person, when I read books, I mark them up all over the place. And so in preparation for this, I had underlined, but then beside a particular quote, there was also a big asterisk. So when I was flipping through, I'm like, what's that? So I wanted to ask you, because there's one quote, which is, you have been taught that being right is good, and being bad is not. So you attempt to evaluate and judge everything around you. Indeed, the word value is contained in evaluate. So what are you getting at with this particular statement, and what are you pointing people to?
So there's a couple of things. The first thing is that if you're going to know what matters now, what matters in your life, you have to know what your values are. That's sort of the first fundamental point. But the second point, and this is perhaps the most difficult one, is that values are different for different people. We tend to hear the word values and we think of societal ethics, norms, rules. And in the context of living life, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about those things that matter to you as an individual, those things that you need to have in order to be able to live your life as meaningfully as possible. And so, the kicker is that what I hold as values, you may not hold as values. You might hold something completely different. And that's where we need to let go of judging one another for the values we hold.
So you have chosen the title, What Matters Now? And I have to say again, I've had the privilege of being able to read the book and kind of marinate and think about it. And I am noticing what a provocative and powerful question that is, to the point where I've been using it with my clients a lot, so thank you. And every time I say it, people go, oh. So how did you land on the title?
The short answer is I don't know. The longer answer is I believe it's just one of those things that came, in the sense of it's what I'm constantly asking. So when I'm faced with a challenge, when I'm faced with a dilemma, when I'm faced with a quandary, even as I'm spinning my wheels and feeling myself go out of control, what brings me back to center always is, okay, so what actually matters here? What actually needs my attention? What actually needs the investment of energy that I can put forward? And the answer to that always gets me back on track. And so the simple title of What Matters Now just felt right.
Can you tell me, because you work with a diversity of clients and you've been doing so over the years, you talked a little bit about, originally starting and focusing on work-life balance. Can you maybe give a few other insights on how else has your work with clients informed this book?
Well, in a nutshell, it's been about watching clients go through the experience of being faced with challenges and seeing how they themselves get to a point of finding what matters and making choices accordingly. There's a sense, I know I said it in the introduction, I can't emphasize it enough. There is a sense of absolute liberation that comes when you know that what you're doing is based on what matters. And so my clients have been phenomenal examples and models of that. As they strike upon what matters for them, as they realize what matters in their life and are able to make choices accordingly, they just move with a different energy. They are able to accomplish whatever it is they set out to accomplish, and sometimes they're able to make some pretty profound life changes, always for the better. Not always what they anticipate when we start working, but always in a way that serves for them.
That's really great. In a way, this next quote that I'm going to read might link a little bit to that. One of the things that Gail has done is use quotes to begin each chapter. Again, I was circling all of them because they're all so powerful. One of the ones, though, that you used was, "When you know better, you do better," by Maya Angelou. And can you say, again, why that quote and what does that represent for you?
So Maya Angelou is one of my favorite poets. And that quote, in its simplicity, is absolutely powerful. When you know better, you do better. That's what it boils down to. So in writing this book, my hope was to help people know a better way to live, so that they could live a better life out there, whatever that looks like for them. As I said in the introduction, if you choose to go the hard path, then go ahead, but choose it. Don't do it because it's the default way you've been taught and it's just how you've always done things. So when you know better, you do better, just sort of summarizes it all for me, which is why it's the last chapter quote there.
So the other thing that I had noticed in reading the book and the tone that you bring to it, and I mean, if you know Gail, you know that she's funny, she's a good storyteller on her own life, and so you've woven a lot of that into the book. And so I'm just, I guess the curiosity I have is sort of, the power of telling your own story and weaving some of that in. What's the purpose there? What are you trying? Again, I think you're trying to create an experience for people. So what's your intention?
So I had a couple of options when I had the idea to write the book. One of them was to write more of a textbook style tome, and that I quickly put to the side because it didn't feel right to write something that was difficult to illustrate the point of living a life with ease. What I wanted to do was write something that was conversational and something that was meaningful and something that people could relate to. So the book very deliberately is not textbook style. There isn't a lot of sort of theory and reference material in it. It's not that sort of a book. It's a life experience book that, from my perspective, and certainly the feedback I've gotten from people who've read it, is that it's relatable. That's what I wanted. I wanted to create something that people could read and read with ease and take away because they could actually apply it to their own life.
So what do you notice based on the book, and sort of the premise that you're working from? What are the challenges that present? So the notion of what matters now, what are the things that tend to block people from actually living into what matters most for them?
It goes back to what I said in the introduction. We have this notion as human beings that life is supposed to be hard. So when faced with the idea that all you have to do is answer the question of what matters now, the simplicity of that gets in the way of being able to find a solution, because we tell ourselves it should be a heck of a lot more complicated than that. And if you take nothing away tonight but this particular notion, I want you to know it's not harder than that. What matters now, it'll steer you right every single time.
What are you hoping for how people might use and work with this book? Because there's a story component to it, and then there's a resource section. So what's your hope on how people might interact with the book?
Yeah, the component at the back, which is a bunch of questions and exercises and that sort of thing, is intended for people who really want to dive in and explore how this relates to their own life. I want people to make it real for them. So as much as it's based on a lot of my own experiences that are woven through, I want you to make it yours. And so as you read the book and as the ideas become real for you, I want you to, if you feel so inclined, take up the exercises at the back and ask yourself, how does this fit for me? How does this relate for me? Start to play with it. I'm a big believer in play. Play, dance with, explore, have fun with it. And then take whatever message you can from it and enhance your life so that it serves.
So one of the things that maybe you could share with people is sort of your process for writing the book. Because I'm a Facebook friend with Gail, I kind of knew she was up to something, and I could tell she was going to, I think, Williams and in Strathroy, having her lattes, and I'm sort of like, what's going on? So it's sort of like, maybe lift the veil of the secret life of an author and tell us what your process was to actually birth this baby.
So I can't speak for all authors, I can only speak for myself. I can tell you there are times where I need silence. There are times where I need a good little buzz behind me, ergo the coffee shop. There are times where I need caffeine, ergo the coffee shop. And there are times where I just need to be surrounded by people, witnessing what they're doing, and that's the sort of thing that inspires and energizes me. And so that's what fed my process. And then for me, it's just about allowing the words to flow. I don't know if that's what happens for all authors, but for me, it's really about getting out of the way, stopping the whole, it has to look a certain way thing, and just letting things unfold, and then I can tweak and edit later.
But again, for me, reading it, it's like you're having a conversation. So I think if that was one of your objectives, you really did achieve that. And again, it's sort of the heart, the humor, everything shining through in this book. So it really is beautiful. Maybe in terms of what's next? Like what else do you think might come out of this book? Beyond the written version, what else might you do with it?
So there are a couple things. One is there is a workshop that's in the works, forgive the pun, right out of the book. So to help people figure out how to determine what matters now, that sort of thing. And if you're interested in that, let me know and I can add you to the email list so that I can let you know when that's ready to go. The other thing that is in the works already, which kind of surprises me a little, is there's another book coming that's actually based on the general principles, but it's going to take it a step further, because as I already identified, what matters to me may or may not matter to you. And so I envision a book that addresses that very challenge of what to do when what matters to me doesn't matter to you. and how do you navigate that, and how do you be in relationship with someone who is either diametrically opposed to you or even just slightly off in terms of how your values align and how to dance with that. It's an ongoing challenge for everyone, I know, myself included.
That's great. So that's it for all the questions I have for you. So is there anything that you want to say just to, before we kind of wind down this formal part, to all of your guests and your fans? You've got fans. It's awesome. Thank you, fans, for being here. Now, what any final words that you want to say?
So I will say a few words a little bit later, but at this point what I do want to say is, if you feel so inclined to read the book, if you feel so inclined to work with the message in it, then it's like take up the challenge, dance with it, have fun with it. Don't let it become a should. Please don't should on yourself. And just, have fun with it. Yes. Absolutely have fun with it. Let yourself have fun with it. It's not meant to be one more thing to do on your to-do list. So that's what I would leave you with at this moment.
That's great. Don't should on yourself. Said Gail Barker, October 15th, 2015. So there's your wisdom dose for today. Anyway, thank you so much for sharing, and I think you can see how passionate and excited Gail is about this. And so I'm going to turn this back over to our Master of Ceremonies, Jacob, and he will take us into the next portion. Here we go.